were like fire.
Come on.
Okay.
Dun, dun, dun,
Yes.
dun, 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 dun.
Yes. What do you listen to now?
Oh, I wish I were listening to more music, to be honest with you, because I love it. Just, but
You don't
when
have downtime, like when you have downtime?
I don't have any downtime really. I know my little violin I'm playing right now with you. I really don't. But when I love jazz.
Mm-hmm.
If it's from Thelonious Monk to Miles Davis.
Mm-hmm.
I love Aretha. I was just with Stevie.
Right.
Stevie's, can I tell you?
Yes, you can.
Bucket list. Stevie Wonder on my birthday sang me happy birthday.
See, that's not what a normal person goes through. Stevie Wonder's is not just singing for everybody. See what I mean? This is what I'm talking about.
Happy birthday
to me.
Oh my!
Can you imagine?
No.
I was
See what I mean? See what I mean? They're capping.
literally it was surreal. Can you a bucket list moment
Right.
when Stevie Wonder himself sings you happy birthday?
As an 18-year-old,
Yeah.
could you imagine
Never.
your life would have been like this?
Never.
This many years
Never.
later?
And let me tell you, my mother she had every Stevie and every Aretha Franklin record, every album, like literally every one of them. So Songs in the Key of Life, like all those Stevie songs that were about everything from the movement to optimism. I would have never, at 18, thought that he'd be singing me happy birthday. Ever. Never.
That's the least. I mean, but obviously everybody knows who Stevie is. He was a child prodigy, 13 years old, and he was doing great things. But to see, Madam VP, what you've been able to do, you've had so many firsts. The first woman attorney general, African American, Asian American descent. You was the DA of San Francisco. You were the first Indian American U.S. senator.
And second black woman ever in the history of the United States Senate elected. Second in the history of the United States Senate.
Have you had an opportunity to sit back and reflect and it's like, wow, but work is not yet done?
That's more where I am. The work is not done. The work is not yet done. There's so much to do. I mean, to your point, being in the Senate, there is a weight of responsibility that I know we all feel, right? When we have been blessed with an experience that allows us to be a role model.
Great.
And to hopefully inspire people and to remind them of what's important or point out the things that need to be addressed. So, for example, as only the second black woman elected to the United States Senate, I took on a real role of leadership around black maternal mortality, which affects black women and affects their spouses, their husbands, their families, their children. And I feel a sense of responsibility and a very strong duty to make sure that I use my voice and in a way that is about lifting up people who have not always been in the room.
Hello, America. Mr. States and Shape stepped out for some Black Ops 6, but I'm here as his replacer. Let's start with Texas, shall we?
If you could speak to your 18-year-old self, what would you tell her?
If I could speak to my 18-year-old self, I would probably tell her, continue to keep your friends. My best friend from kindergarten is still one of my best friends.
What?
Yes.
That's cap. See, it's cap. That's cap. Dude, see, all of that's really hard. I'm not saying it's not believable. I'm not saying I can't believe it. I'm just saying it's not believable. Like, bro, you're vice president. You're almost president. You know what I mean? Like, it's too.
Y'all made it to the first grade as best friends?
Yes. In fact, she's been out knocking on doors in North Carolina just this last week for me. Wow. I would say, hold on to that, which is your friends are so important. Your family is so important. I would probably encourage myself at 18 to remember that you have a lot of people who are supporting you even if they don't know you. You know, that's what I mentor a lot of people, Shannon. So this is what I'm really reflecting on, which is what I tell the young people I mentor, including to know that even when you are in that room and you're the only one who looks like you or who has had your life experience, to know you are not alone in that room, and that you must therefore walk in that room, chin up, shoulders back, knowing we're all there applauding you. When I mentor young women and men, I remind them that you are often going to be told, well, it's not your time, not your turn, you're too young, nobody like you has done this before. And I tell them, you know, don't you ever listen to that. I like to say, I eat no for breakfast. I don't hear no. You ask me what I eat for breakfast? I eat no for breakfast. I don't hear it.
Right.
And that's part of what are my life lessons that I try to share with young people, to remind them that you cannot ever be burdened by other people's limited ability to understand who you are. Like, don't let their limited ability burden you about your own ability, you know?
Madam VP, you were raised by a single mom. What did that experience tell you about your mom, and what did it tell you about you?
Well, it told me that one of the things that is precious is to build community and family.
Okay.
Like my mother, she understood that there is a community that she wanted her children to be raised in. And she was very intentional and purposeful about that. And so I always say to people, even when I took the stage as the nominee for the Democratic nomination, that, you know, there is the family that you have by birth, and there is also the family you have by love. And they're equally family,
Yes.
right? And I learned that from my mother. So my mother, I had all these aunties and uncles. My Uncle Sherman, who was one of the first black men to graduate from Berkeley School of Law, who, when we were young girls, sat us down and taught us how to play chess. Because Uncle Sherman said, you need to understand how the chessboard works, because that's the way the world works. There are going to be different players with different moves, and you need to see the whole board. My mother raised us around, like my Auntie Chris, who went to Howard in the 50s and pledged Alpha Kappa Alpha. And she was one of my incredible role models growing up. And that was one of the big reasons I wanted to go to Howard University and pledge Alpha Kappa Alpha. Those are some of the lessons that I've learned from my mother. And I try to also share with people, right? Which is the beauty of community. And it's the way I am, right? Which is, you know, the children in my life, whether they be my own or, you know, my godchildren or whomever, right? That it's a collective responsibility that we have.
Did you know you were different? I mean, were there a lot of people in the community that looked like you and like your mom, or did your mom tell you you were different?
Well, my mother taught us to, and everyone in my growing up, you know, they would tell all of us kids that we were special.
Okay.
I don't think we were particularly special.
Right.
But they told us we were, and we believed them.
Yes.
We believed them. I think that's such an important part of what we can all do for the children and the children in our lives. And, you know, but my mother raised two black girls to be proud black women. Back to music, one of the soundtracks from my childhood was...
Why does she keep saying she's black? She's not black.
You know, you are young, gifted, and black.
Why does she keep saying she's black? She's not black.
You know, and that's what it was.
Your mom, because you was a single parent, and that was pretty much what you had, although you had a community
Yes.
to help raise you.
Yes.
How did you cope with that loss?
Grief is difficult. It's difficult. You know, there are two sides to the coin about when you have relationships in your life that touch you deeply, and then to lose that person, it leaves a big void, right? That's the two sides. And I think that part of what I was just talking about this, but the big part about grief is, especially if you lose somebody to a sickness, to an illness, I think it's really important that you try to remember them as they lived and not as they died.
Right.
Because I think that's how they'd want us to remember them, but also to remember their suffering, which hopefully was a fraction of their time on this earth, is to compound the grief in a way that I think it adds to the pain. And what they'd want is that their active memory, that our active memory of them is about when they were vibrant and alive. So
let's get into things that will change what will happen if you were to become president, say in the next 12 to 13 days. Polls suggest that voters trust President Trump, former President Trump, more on the economy. What can you tell the voters, our viewing audience, our listening audience, that if you were to become president, while Madam VP Kamala Harris will be much better on the economy than what President Trump was?
Well, so I'm really glad you brought that up, Shannon. So first of all, let's clear up certain myths.
Okay.
You know those checks that went out?
Yes. Those stimmies?
Right. Right.
Stimulus check.
Yeah, I know. Well, right. Yes.
We got to be full. Stimulus, but they call them stimmies. Okay.
The reason those came about is because there was a Democratic majority in the House of Representatives and Congress. People like Maxine Waters, people like Hakeem Jeffries, right?
Yes.
Who did the work of pushing to say, people need help right now and we need to send out checks. There was a whole lot of opposition to it, including from Donald Trump's White House.
Yes, even him. I think he was resistant to it at first.
Yes. That's why those checks, remember, Congress holds the purse.
Yes.
So really, Congress wrote those checks, but then Donald Trump, unlike any president before or after, decided he put his name on those checks.
So therefore people thought
Donald Trump gave me that check. And so let's clear that up first and foremost,
Okay.
but let's also deal with where he was in terms of his policies on the economy. He gave the biggest tax cuts for billionaires and the biggest corporations, which caused an incredible deficit. He tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, which we also call Obamacare, which benefited so many people, including and in particular black people in America who otherwise were denied by the insurance companies health coverage because of pre-existing conditions.
Yes, that's most important. Let the people know.
Right?
With a Affordable Care Act, if you have a pre-existing condition, insurance companies can no longer deny you coverage.
That's exactly right. And if you think about what that means in the context of also knowing the big health disparities we have in the black community,
Correct.
and how more likely, therefore, black folks might be to have pre-existing conditions.
High blood pressure, diabetes,
all of
certain
that.
cancers.
All of that.
Yes.
Asthma for our children.
Yes. Sickle cell trait.
It's all of that. So by getting rid of the pre-existing condition ban, what that did, but he wanted to get rid of the Affordable Care Act.
Right.
What we have done, and part of my policies going forward include what we need to do to not only retain the cap that we got on insulin at $35 a month for seniors. By the way, black folks are 60% more likely to be diagnosed with diabetes.
Correct.
He wants to get rid of it with that Project 2025. Everybody needs to check that out. What he would do to get rid of Social Security, or at least raise the age to 70, so you'd have to work to 70 to be able to qualify.
Right.
Get rid of Medicare, get rid of the Affordable Care Act. And that's just on health policy, not to mention bringing back not only tax cuts for the richest people, but what he would do that is about eliminating or reducing the ability of corporations to be required to pay overtime pay.
So you could work and the corporations wouldn't have to pay you for
overtime.
Who work for free?
That's right. And overtime means you are actually working a longer day, which means you are more tired.
Right.
Which means it requires more exertion. That's why we have overtime pay, so you don't take advantage of workers. In addition to all of that, we're looking at Donald Trump, basically somebody who has never been understanding of the issues that affect the community about disparities. And I'm going to talk, for example, about how when he was a landlord, he denied rent to black families. You look at what he did in terms of taking out a full-page ad in the New York Times against the Central Park Five,
Correct.
which were a bunch of, they're not young adults, they were teenagers, black and brown teenagers. Took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for their execution for crimes they did not commit. They were innocent. Donald Trump, who said of the first black president of the United States, the birtherism, to have people question whether he was born in the United States, to try and diminish. And then most recently, you look in this very election, legal black immigrants in Springfield, Ohio, saying they're eating their pets. So part of what we have to help people understand is, don't think you're in Donald Trump's club. You're not.
Right.
He's not going to be thinking about you. You think he's having you over for dinner? You think that when he's with his buddies, his billionaire buddies, he's thinking about what we need to do to deal with addressing, for example, my work around what I'm doing to address disparities in black men's health, around colon cancer, around what we need to do around screenings, what we need to do around prostate cancer. Black men are twice as likely to have, and screenings. What we need to do to address.
I'm a survivor of prostate cancer.
Right. You know what I'm talking about.
Go James and the Lakers. They're one play for the micro to gas price to keep them, because the economy seems to be heading in the right direction. But the inflation, gas prices are extremely high. Groceries are extremely high. This rent. I mean, it used to be when I was renting, they moved the rent up $40 a year. Now they moved it up $400.
So let's talk about that. I'm glad you raised that. So, for example, groceries, yes, the prices are still too high. You know it, I know it.
Yeah.
Part of my plan is to deal with price gouging. I did it when I was Attorney General. I'm going to do it as president, which is these companies that will jack up the prices of groceries to take advantage of people in need, and in particular during a crisis, like what you see around the pandemic or Hurricane Helene.
Yes. Milton.
Right?
Yes.
Milton, right? So there's that. In terms of housing, first of all, we know that black families are 40% less likely to own their home. And we can go back to redlining. We can go back to policies that were by law or practice meant to not give black folks equal opportunity to home ownership, especially in certain neighborhoods. We can go back to what happened around the GI Bill, and when all those, the great generation we called them, came back, and there was federal policy to say, you all fought for our country, we're going to give you a boost around helping you buy homes. But those black servicemen, and it was mostly men, those black servicemen did not. So you had then a time when there was a boost, it ended up being not for black service members. So part of my policy is to, one, create a fund so that we will give a $25,000 down payment to first-time homeowners to just help people get in the door. We will deal with the rent issue, because part of what we're seeing in Atlanta, in places across our country, is these corporations are buying up all these properties. Which means then that they don't have to deal with competition between the properties, and they're jacking up rent costs. So it's about also going after that corporate gouging around what they're doing to buy up and then jack up the prices of rent. We also need to help people with small business ownership. I did, even before I was running for president, a tour, I called it the Opportunity Economy Tour, focused on black men and black entrepreneurs. What we know is, unlike Donald Trump, who got $400 million handed to him practically on a silver platter. And by the way, Shannon filed for bankruptcy 6 times. Everybody wants to say he's a great businessman. Take a look at his record. I know that so many of our entrepreneurs who have great ideas don't have access to capital, but they have serious work ethic, great ideas, and a plan to do the work. So part of my plan is to increase access to capital, including giving $20,000 forgivable loans for startup capital for people to buy the equipment.
Right.
And then to change the tax deduction, so whereas it is now $5,000 to make it $50,000 to start a new business, because nobody can start a new business on $5,000. No. And the direct benefit, when we're looking at black entrepreneurs, is profound. And all it is about saying this: Americans in general, regardless of their race or gender, we have ambition, we have aspirations, we have dreams, but not everyone has access to the opportunity to let some actually accomplish that. I want to increase access to opportunity.
Listen, unfortunately, I've gone viral a few. Now, 100 insurance presidency benefit. What measures would you put in place to make sure Social Security benefits continue? Because there are reports that it could possibly be depleted by 2033. And there are estimated that 11,000 people turn at least 65 years of age every single day.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do to make sure, because that, people, disabilities, retirement, survivors with beneficiaries, what are you going to do to make sure that that continues?
So, Shannon, to your point, there was an independent economic review of Donald Trump's plan, which shows that Social Security in the next 6 years would be insolvent under his plan, meaning that it would not be able to pay out what hardworking people who deserve dignity in their retirement deserve. And as you and I both know, there are a lot of our seniors who their only source of income is that Social Security check.
That's correct.
Right? It's the only way they're going to pay the rent or have food on the table. So my plan is about doing what we need to do to put the resources back into Social Security, but also expanding it. Because here's part of the problem with Social Security is that for our aging seniors, if they are a couple, for example, and one of the spouses passes, that cuts their Social Security benefits almost in half. So part of my plan is to reconfigure it so that that surviving spouse does not then have a crisis where they've already lost their loved one. But we also just have to understand on a macro level, we've got to require that billionaires and corporations pay their fair share, right? They can afford to. And that's part of what is the difference between me and Donald Trump. My plan is about tax cuts for small businesses, for working people, for middle-class people. 100 million Americans will benefit around tax cuts. My plan is that no taxes will be raised for anybody making less than $400,000 a year. My plan is that we give young parents a $6,000 child tax credit to help them pay for child care, for a crib or a car seat, because you and I both know the vast majority of our young parents have a natural desire to parent their children well, but not always the resources. And back to the way I was raised, I know that the children of the community are the children of the community. That you and I will benefit from that young family having the resources they need. So it's about all of us benefiting, but it's a state of mind and it's a perspective. Mine is about thinking about the challenges people face and getting them help. Donald Trump is full-time focused on himself. You watch his rallies. He will spend full-time talking about, I was going to say Freddy Krueger, Hannibal Lecter. Might as well be Freddy Krueger. Hannibal Lecter. He'll spend full-time talking about his grievances, about what everyone has done to him. He'll talk about himself, but he does not talk about the American people. He does not talk about what he's going to do for middle class. He does not talk about what he's going to do for families, for working people. And we're 12 days out. This is probably one of the most serious elections that we have faced in our lifetime. My perspective, and I will be the kind of president who spends full time focused on the needs of the people. That has been my career. I have spent my whole career as a public servant trying to uplift the condition of other people, knowing what is possible and doing it with a sense of optimism. On January 20th, a new president is going into the White House. Period. A new president is going into the White House. Do you want to look at the Oval Office and see a Donald Trump who's going to be sitting there filling out his enemies list, spending full time figuring out retribution and revenge, or looking at the Oval Office and knowing you have a president in there who's creating a to-do list that's about what to do to help the American people?
So raising minimum age of Social Security, that's not on the table for you?
No. Look, people work hard all their lives. And they deserve to be able to retire with dignity. I'll tell you how I come at this. I come at it from a number of perspectives, including thinking about how I was raised in terms of how you take care of the elders, right? I think about it in terms of taking care of my mother when she was sick and dying from cancer. So one of my policies, for example, is to help Medicare pay for home health care for seniors. Why? Because look, I did it, and it means, trying to cook for an elder, to make something they feel like eating, right? To help them put on a sweater. And we have so many people who are in the sandwich generation. They're raising their young kids and taking care of their parents. And either they have to deplete their savings to qualify for Medicaid, right? To be able to help pay for home health care, or they have to quit their job to do the work of taking care of their kids and their parent. And I just believe that's not right. That we should have policies that give people dignity, especially our seniors. So my plan is Medicare pays for home health care.
Okay.
And no, I would not raise the age of eligibility for Social Security, because the same thing, we shouldn't force people to work until they're 70 in order to retire and have a moment to just enjoy their life and not worry about how they're going to pay their rent.
Is Medicare for all a priority for you?
What is a priority for me is making sure that access to health care is a right and not just a privilege of those who can afford it. That's why I am in favor of and have pushed and been a leader on capping the cost of insulin at $35 a month. And why I intend to allow Medicare to actually negotiate against the big pharmaceutical companies to bring down the cost of prescription medication for everybody. That's why I have fought for what we need to do around making sure Medicare covers senior care. Access to health care should not be a question of how much money you have in your back pocket. That's just not right. And I feel strongly about that.
Blacks for Trump. They feel that Trump is better for the black community. Can you explain Donald Trump's history with blacks? Where did this come that all of a sudden, I mean, it's been like this because a lot of people used to say, I'm Donald Trump of the ghetto, because he was, I mean, for a lot of blacks, not all, but for some blacks, he was, Madam VP, whether we want to admit it or not, he's revered by some blacks.
But here's the thing. The question for everybody, should he be president of the United States?
Okay.
Right? That's the question. Should he have the ability to sit behind the seal of the President of the United States when he says he wants to terminate the Constitution of the United States? You know what that would mean? In the Constitution of the United States is your Fourth Amendment right against unreasonable search and seizure, your Fifth Amendment right, your Sixth Amendment right to an attorney.
Well, a lot of rights going to be gone. The First Amendment.
But the First Amendment, the Second Amendment.
Yes.
Look, I'm in favor of the Second Amendment. I don't believe we should be taking anybody's guns away. He wants to terminate the Constitution of the United States. He is the same one, like I said earlier, who denied rent to black families, who took out that full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution of those children, who birtherism accusations against the first black president. Not to mention please ask folks to Google Project 2025.
Yeah.
He would get rid of the $35 a month cap on insulin. We know how many of our seniors had it. I'll give you another example of why Donald Trump has not earned the support of folks to be president of the United States again. When he was president the last time, during the height of COVID, 1 in 3 black Americans knew somebody who died from COVID. You remember those days?
I do.
And people couldn't get their hands on a COVID test. At that very same time, Donald Trump as president secretly sent COVID tests to the president of Russia for his personal use. While Americans were dying every day, he has not earned the right to be president of the United States. It's one thing if he has a television show that's very popular. He can put his name on a building. Even though we all know he was not a terribly good businessman, which is why he filed for bankruptcy 6 times. But that is one thing. To be president of the United States means to try and find common ground, to build consensus, to lift up the American people instead of trying to beat people down all the time. It means solving problems, which means you have to be able to get out of your own head and scan to be concerned about the well-being of other people and then do something about it. Does anyone think Donald Trump thinks that way?
Yeah, well, empathy requires you to divorce your own ego to see yourself as someone else.
That's exactly right. And we know that's not his character. So it's about, is this the right person for that job, right?
He said immigrants are taking black jobs. I don't know what those black jobs that they're taking. Can you elaborate on that? What the immigrants are taking? What black jobs are they?
It's just another example of him trying to divide and him trying to scare people. It's just another example of him doing that, of him trying to say it's either you or them, right? And the other thing is that it's incredibly demeaning because, and he still has not been forced to define, Donald Trump, what do you define as a black job? Because let me tell you what I define as a black job. Vice President of the United States.
That's a good one.
Right?
It is.
Come
I don't
on.
know about the pay, but it's a good job to have. That'll be.
Well, you know, not everybody is Shannon Sharpe.
No, but you know what I wanted to ask? You've been in basically your adult life. You've been a public servant.
Yes, I have.
You've been AG.
My whole adult life.
You've been a DA.
Yeah.
You've been a senator. You've been VP. Is that what you envisioned? Is that what you always wanted to be? Was a public servant?
I've always wanted to serve. You know, I was raised, I mean, back to whether you are, however you are raised, in the community in which you are raised, including the church in which you are raised, I have always believed that it is an important pursuit to figure out how you can serve. And we can do it in different ways, right? I chose public service, you chose a different route, but it's about service. And I have always, I mean, I've only had one client my entire life, the people. And the reason I keep doing it is because I know the difference that I and we can make when we believe in what is possible and then work hard at it. And my pledge in this campaign to everyone, regardless of who you are, where you live, what you look like, I will be a president for all Americans. And I will work to bring our country back together because, frankly, I think people are exhausted with the anger, with the hate, with the division, the attempt to have Americans pointing their fingers at each other. I think people are exhausted. It's not healthy for the productivity of our country. Like, do we want to strive? Do we want to thrive? Or do we want to spend full time with vengeance, demeaning other people? And living a life of service is about, I think, the importance of lifting people up, not tearing them down.
My team here at Shay Shay Media is always growing and making moves. Sometimes it's a challenge to find qualified candidates, especially when I need them right away. Thankfully, there's a place you can go for help. ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter does the work for you to make hiring fast and easy. And right now, you can try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com. Fast stranger and hiring. The problem that I have with that, it just seems like only black people pander. Like when other candidates go on shows and they say they're going to do this, they're not pandering. They're telling you, laying out their elaborate plan on what they're going to do. But it seems to you, when you promise that if I'm president, this is what I'm going to do in the first 90 days. This is what I'm going to do. My administration's going to do while I'm in office. You're pandering. How do you get through to those that says, look, this is what I'm going to do. If I'm elected president, these are the policies, and they will lead to meaningful and impactful change.
Well, part of it is just to be candid. I think that there's sadly a misinformation out there about who I am and what I've done, because if people are informed about fact, they will know that almost everything that I'm talking about doing as president is built on a foundation of work that I've been doing for years. If it is about economic empowerment of the black community and all communities, I've been working on that. As vice president, I am responsible for billions of dollars from big banks and big corporations, including technology companies, getting into community banks to increase access to capital for minority-owned and other small businesses. If you look at my work over a period of years, my focus again on something like maternal mortality is long-standing, which directly impacts black men and black women.
Right.
And the black family. If you look at the work that I am doing that is about small businesses, you know, the person who helped my mother raise us, who was a second mother to us, was a small business owner. I have always focused for such a long time on what we need to do, knowing that our small businesses are part of the culture of our communities, right? Including the economic fabric and strength of the community. So what I'm talking about doing right now is based on long-standing work. It's not new. But as President of the United States, part of why it is important is it is a new approach to that job. It is about a new way that is based on a new generation of leadership, that is based on new ideas, and frankly, a different experience that brings my commitment.
Dude, she's on here crying and complaining about being a black person in society. Guess what? Every black person is going through that, and I'm not gonna say just black. I'm just saying every American is going through some crazy shit right now, and there's not a lot of things the government are really trying to do to help people, because they already know like America's like destroyed and basically over with, but they don't care, you know. They continue to do the things that they do, jack up prices, destroy single family homes, and basically honestly just lead you down the wrong path. There's a opiate pandemic, like COVID-19 is still a thing, and we're in 2014. We're in 2024. We're about to go 2025, and no one has done shit about it. You're not gonna sit there and tell me that the government and the president has been trying to protect the people. There's no way you're gonna try to convince me about this. Absolutely no way.
To the work I am talking about, into being.
Can you give us a breakdown of how
You see what I mean? You see what I mean?
how you will allow blacks and other minorities to access capital? Because you speak a lot about capital, and in order for people to become successful and have some wealth, is that they need to have access to that to get started.
So that's in fact why I did, starting last or earlier this year, my economic opportunity tour, way before I was running for president, because I realized that so many of our entrepreneurs don't actually have that we need to do better in getting information to people about what's available to them. So for example, through the Small Business Administration, there are funds available to help people create a business plan. There is resources available to help people just know how that you need to run a payroll, how you need to pay business taxes. Part of my plan, by the way, is to simplify taxes for small businesses. I like to say it's basically, I'm going to date myself, like, you remember the 1040 Did you ever have to do a 1040 Probably never.
No.
Okay, I did. But, you know, simplifying tax returns for people, including our small businesses. But the work that I have done and will continue to do is about knowing that we don't lack for hard work, we don't lack for good ideas, but we do lack for information about the help that is available. So that's part of how it is going to be about increasing access to capital. Part of it is about putting more money. So I called up and got in touch with and worked with some of the big CEOs of the biggest corporations in America and said, and the big banks, that you all don't necessarily, you're not there in the community where you can get $100,000 loan to a small business. You guys deal at a different level, but those $100,000 loans for a startup will go a long way. Let's get those billions of dollars that you've got, put them into community banks who are in the community, who know what the community needs, what they want, what the consumers there want, and then support those small businesses. So that's my approach to access to capital, including making sure that people have, again, simplifying taxes for small businesses. You know why, Shannon? Small businesses can't afford to hire a bunch of accountants.
Yeah, they can't help.
And a bunch of lawyers. But that shouldn't be the reason they fail, because they didn't fill out the form properly.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
So my approach is really understanding the culture, understanding the needs, and then trying to fix problems. I love fixing problems with common sense solutions. And again, look, Donald Trump is never going to relate necessarily to the kind of folks that I'm talking about, who on the ground just need to be seen and heard, and then let's fix the problems. Let's address the challenges to let them not just get by, but get ahead. And I want to put a fine point on this. Maybe it's a new perspective. I think it is. I believe that we have had great success in bringing black unemployment down to historic lows.
Yes.
But for me, that's a floor. For me, that's a floor. Because what I know is that it should be baseline that everybody's working. That's not enough. People want to build wealth.
Yes.
And intergenerational wealth.
Correct.
And I want to help people do that, right? Mm-hmm. I know what folks want to be able to take a nice vacation from time to time, have nice Christmas gifts for their kids under the tree. And it can't just be about, well, you've got a job, applaud me for what I've done for you.
Right.
And that's the spirit with which I do my work.
I saw President Trump on a TV show, and he talked about defunding the Department of Education.
Yes.
Basically, we know that's going to affect communities like us that don't have the resources. Mm-hmm. And then because he says he doesn't, if they talked about slavery, which is a part of our history,
that they're trying to cover up.
Yes.
That they're trying to cover up.
They talk about racism. And he said, well, what we would do if they talked about it, they wouldn't get funding. And we know what communities are going to be most impacted by non-funding.
And understand that they want to get rid of the Department of Education and get rid of Head Start. You know whose kids are in Head Start? They want to, it is, and to your point, and I'm so glad you pointed this out, you know, these are the same people who basically suggested that enslaved people benefited from slavery. The same people who are trying to ban and are banning books. Mm-hmm. And again, if we don't teach America's full history, we will never ensure that we don't make the same.
Yes.
To do those same things again.
Let's learn from that painful part of our history to make sure we don't repeat it, but not by not covering it up. Let's have an open and honest conversation about it. It happened.
And the effects of it. Yes. And the present day effects of it.
Mm-hmm. I think we both agree. I think we can all agree on this, that there is a problem with, I don't know how the correct term, I think it's undocumented. Mm. How do we get a hold on that, Madam VP? How do we make sure, because I think I've heard you say you want a path to citizenship, but we want to, make sure people come in and do things properly.
Yes, that's exactly right. So first of all, I have personally prosecuted transnational criminal organizations. Mm-hmm. For the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. I have prosecuted the Sinaloa cartel, okay? The Guadalajara cartel. So I put my record up to anybody in terms of how strongly I feel about having a secure border mm-hmm. and making sure that there is not that kind of trafficking into America. I also know that we need to put more resources at the border, which is why I supported a bill that came about, including from the most conservative members of Congress, to put 1,500 more border agents at the border, to do what we need to do to cut down the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States, which is killing people of every race and background. More resources would have gone to prosecuting human trafficking. Donald Trump got word of that bill. And he knew it would be a solution to a problem, which is that we have a broken immigration system. Mm-hmm. He got word of the bill, and he told his friends in Congress, don't put it up for a vote. Don't let it go any further. Because, you see, he wants to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. Right. And is putting out tens of millions of dollars of campaign commercials full-time, trying to suggest that he cares about strengthening the border when he had an opportunity to participate in a solution, which he killed, because he's not about problem solving. It's about a political game for him. My point is, we got to strengthen the border, and we need to have an immigration system that is fair and humane and strong in terms of making sure that people have to earn citizenship, they have to work hard to get it.